Hey guys. Elias D here. And I'm going to tell you my opinion on Vyond's voices. I know a lot of users did this. But I wanted to do my own version. Because why not anyways? Let's get started. Next up. Tom. Tom is alright. But I don't use this voice as much. First up. Joey. Joey is the funniest voice ever. I even like the way he says milk. Here is an example.
Can I have some milk?
Ha! I like when Joey says milk. That is so funny. Next up, Eric. Eric is the best voice ever. This voice is very pronounceable. And very smart. I use this voice a lot on my character and other characters who has this voice. Next up. Julie. Julie is alright. But I don't want to use her default voice because her default voice is boring. So I will use old Julie voice from Neo's speech on Ballet Bolka instead. Next up, Salli. Salli is alright. But the way she cries is super annoying. But the way she sounds now is very cringeworthy. So I will just use old Salli on narrator's voice instead. But I respect your opinion on this voice. I also miss her old crying voice, which is another reason why I use it. Next. Alan. Alan is my favorite voice. I like it because it sounds cool like the other Vocalware voices. Next up. Dave. Dave is okay. But his voice is too deep. And I don't use this voice as much. Next up. Kate. Kate is my favorite voice. This voice sounds just like a grown-up. So I will continue using this voice. Next up. Bridget. Bridget is okay. But I don't use this voice as much. Next up. Allison. Allison is okay. And I still like her voice. Next up. Amy. Amy is okay. And her voice is low-pitched of Emma. So Amy is one of my favorite voices. Next up. Ashley. Ashley is okay. But I don't this voice as much in my videos. Next up. Russel. Russel is alright. But his can be very annoying sometimes. Next up. Brian. Brian is alright. But when you put GRRRRRRR all the way, it starts to sound like a chicken. Here is an example. See? That's exactly why I don't like new Brian. Besides, that sounds like an old grandpa. I do not like when it sounds like that with the new Brian voice. It sounds much better with the old Brian voice. Next up. Catherine. Catherine is my favorite voice. This voice is also very talented even when she says, "No way." So I really like this voice. Next up. Daniel. Daniel is my favorite voice. I like this voice because this voice is so MLG. Next up. Elizabeth. Elizabeth is okay. But her voice too deep. And I don't use this voice as much. Next up. Ivy. Ivy is my favorite voice. This voice is so cute. Next up. Emma. Emma is the best British text-to-speech ever on Goanimate. Her accent is very awesome. Along with Simon. And her voice is high-pitched of Amy. So I will still use this voice. Next up. Fiona. I do not like this voice at all. Next up, Geraint. Geraint is okay. But I don't use this voice as much. Next up. Grace. Grace is alright. But her voice can be very annoying. But I still like her voice. Next up. Hugh. Hugh is alright. But I don't like using this voice as much. Next up. Justin. Justin is alright. But I don't use this voice as much. Next up. James. James is okay. I used to use this voice for my avatar back in April 2018. But this voice didn't fit my character. So I changed it to Simon instead. But I still like this voice. Next up, Jill. Jill is alright. But when I put the punctuation instead of the comma, she just passes the punctuation. Here is an example.
Dark me author, how dare you misbehave in class? That's it. Go to the principal's office right now.
See? When I put a mark except for the comma, She just talks directly when there's a punctuation except for the comma. But I will only use this voice for Miss Jill from Vincent the Fantendo and Vyond Masters videos. Next up, Jennifer. Jennifer is so funny. I like this voice. Even the crying voice. It's so funny. So I will start using this voice. Next up, Joanna. Joanna is good. But I still like this. Next up, Karen. Karen is alright. But this voice is not great. But I respect your opinion on this voice. Next up, Kendra. Kendra is okay. But this voice is awesome. And this voice is similar to Kimberly. Next up, Kimberly. Kimberly is alright. But her current crying voice is annoying. So I used narrator's voice for her old graying voice. But I still like this voice. And this voice is high-pitched of Kendra. Next up, Serena. Serena is alright. But her voice is still okay. Next up, Tom. Tom is alright. But his voice is just like Daniel. Next up, Sangeeta. Sangeeta is alright. But her voice can be very annoying sometimes. Nicole. Nicole is alright. And I do not like this voice. I only use this on Sarah Q in the video Sarah Q's new voice. But I later removed the video after I got Sarah's old voice back. Moira. I don't like this voice as much. But I only use it on characters I want to add into my videos. Next up, Lee. Lee is alright. But I don't use this voice as much. Next up, Raveena. Raveena is alright. But I never use her voice. Next up, Samantha. This voice is awesome. This voice is also heard on the iPhone or iPad. And this voice is also heard when you call Best Buy. This voice is awesome. Next up, Simon. This voice is alright. But this voice mispronounces almost every word. Which is why I stopped using it for my avatar last year. But I still use this voice. Next up, Steven. Steven is the best voice ever. Because he can understand and his voice is so brave. So this voice is my favorite voice along with Eric and Simon. Next up, Susan. Susan is the best voice ever. I use this voice a lot on my cousin. Next up, Tessa. Tessa is not that great. So I don't use this voice. And last, Raveena. This voice is okay. But I don't use it as much. But anyways, that is my opinion on all of Goanimate's voices. Thanks for watching. And stay tuned for more content in the future. That's all for now. This is me Elias D signing off.